What is up, everybody? I hope you guys are staying safe out there at always. Today, I am going to be giving a in-depth explanation for the Revan ribbons they have released, and super excited about these ribbon indicators, or this ribbon indicator. Just an incredible tool I've seen over the last few weeks here. It just prove itself time and time again. We're going to look at a lot of different things about it. I actually made a video for this, and it was over an hour long, so I'm going to try to squeeze it into a half an hour max, just to help you guys out, so you don't have to sit here as I go over and over things. The first thing we're going to look at is just a brief overview of the user interface. Then we're going to look at the table and look on a couple time frames, look at a couple different time frames and the indicator. So the first thing that is important to decide when you're looking or using this indicator is kind of what your goal is. On the daily time frame right now, it's set up much more as a swing trade indicator. You can use it as more of a scalping trade. You can use it so many different ways with the kind of AI, adaptive learning, machine learning, adaptive confluence, all of these things. The touch lines, super useful. I'll go ahead and turn those on and we'll talk about them in a minute. But first, let me kind of just give a brief overview of the way that I look at the bands, and when I'm creating on a couple different time frames, things I might look for. So let's go to a 4-hour time frame. It's definitely lower time frames are need a lot more dialing in with the bands. They're made for higher term time frames, and also takes a while for them to load on lower term time frames. But I'll a lot of times make the smoothing a lot higher. I might mess with the exponent AI. So the exponent AI determines how wide the master support and resistance are. And just a quick overview of those. So you'll see 3 resistance bands and 3 support bands. I just call those resistance R1, R2, and R3 for resistance, and S1, S2, S3 for support. On the indicator today, I've mislabeled a couple things I need to fix. I've actually just changed the name. So instead of calling, I used to call this a master band 1, resistance band 1, support band 1, and then confluence 1, confluence 2. But it got confusing having number 1 bands. So I'm going to relabel these. But just so you know, R1 is ribbon 1. It's going to be changed to ribbon 2, which will mean that one. So it'll be support ribbon 1. The master band settings are right here, and then confluence bands are the other bands, other ribbons. So it'll be support 1, resistance 1, and then support 2 and 3, resistance ribbon 2. So that's why it's called R1, and R2 is ribbon 1, ribbon 2, which will be in the future ribbon 2, ribbon 3. Hopefully that all makes sense. We have your smoothing for your master bands. So these are just the 2 bands, the 2 main bands, and then that, if I change that to 1, it changes all, because it changes the master bands and the confluence bands as well. So that will change in a moment. You'll see that the shift here happen on resistance. All of them, again, they're kind of made to coincide with each other. You can adjust the distance of what I call the confluence bands, or ribbon 2 and ribbon 3. Right now it's on 1 and 1 multiple away, and then 2 and 3. Because Bitcoin is generally more bullish, I have it set higher confluence to the upside, so it has more room to run to the upside before it hits. You could probably find some times in the past where it'll hit the resistance, or resistance 3 ribbon. Let me find that real fast, get the chart zoomed in here. And it usually is just during the most bullish times it'll happen. So sorry, I'm on a 4-hour time frame. Daily time frame, it happens more often. 4-hour, there we go. It happens a little bit right here. But yeah, so for any time frame, what I'm generally looking for when I adjust the settings is it to coincide with what I'm trying to do. So if I'm trying to swing trade, I'll try to make the ribbons matter a whole lot when they get touched. So currently right now on the settings, when it dips down, you can maybe see this better later. It's actually, the default settings are actually pretty good for the 4-hour. I guess on support, let me reset the support here real fast. There we go. That's going to reset in a second. You'll definitely find okay, for this is a good example. When price is going to the downside, it just really runs into the bands and keeps hitting the bands, hitting the bands, hitting the bands. There's no meaningful bounce each time. Now maybe there's a small bounce there, small kind of bounce there, and then finally, there's a decent bounce there. Goes into support ribbon 2, bounce, support ribbon 2, bounce. So this isn't bad, but if I was to adjust this for the 4-hour time frame, what I would probably be trying to do would be to make it really meaningful when it hits some of these bands, so to find more what I would call meaningful swing trades. If this was more of a scalp thing, it might be pretty nice for where it is. Swing trading, I might let's just look at support real fast. I might take support up higher and then try to use Exponent AI to widen the band so that when it does come down into support, you see a meaningful bounce each time. I guess even just making the smoothing a little bit higher did help. A lot of times, it does find, it's interesting on the daily, and a lot of time frames you'll find a slight dip below, like somewhere in between support 1 and support 2 is actually more meaningful than on support 1 and 2. So if you want to, you can mess with the Exponent AI or the confluence bands. You could make the confluence bands tighter. However, you'd probably want to adjust some other settings. So because right now it's kind of basing off of there. So if we were to make this confluence band higher, this would kind of be in no man's land as well. So I'm generally, when I'm going through settings, is I'm trying to find where price is respecting the bands the most possible, especially in bounce areas and reversal areas. So you might do that. You might put Exponent AI on 2 or 3. Might enable adaptive learning, and we'll look at this really briefly later on. It's just going to take experimentation. None of anything in this video is financial advice. And I really want users to find their own way in their own settings. Honestly, I have only really dialed this in on the 1-day time frame and briefly messed with it on the 4-hour, the 2-day, the week, the month, and found some useful settings, but there's much more to be discovered. So yeah, even by putting Exponent AI 2, now you can see, okay, resistance is actually being meaningfully respected. This resistance 2 band right there, pretty well respected. You're still finding maybe we need to bring confluence band 2 up a little bit. I talked about that earlier, which will be called ribbon 2 later on. Let's look at that. So I want to bring support ribbon 2 higher, so I'll just put that in 0.7, maybe 7.5, 8, we'll see. So that'll bring this up a little bit. It'll probably take a minute to do that. Then you can mess with the smoothing more. You can try some adaptive learning. You could try, there's 2 different variations of it, and the strength or the learning rate of those will affect. Okay, so now that's a nice point there, but then you kind of have to look and see, is price like having meaningful respecting the band still? Looks like, yeah, kind of did there. Finally went down, tested that band, rode that band there, tested it. So all of this is looking pretty decent. We do see it sometimes breaks the far side band. If you don't want it to do that, you can always change the confluence band number 3 or the ribbon 3, make that 2.5 or 3, something like that. You can make the smoothing a little bit shallower, like 5. That will make it respond faster. But a lot of times I do like the smoothing higher. Sometimes I'll even put it up to like 13, and then maybe put the Exponent AI on 3, so it's really wide bands and slowly moving in to find price action. But yeah, where it's at right now, default, decent settings. I would, again, really encourage users to spend some good amount of time messing around with the settings, making notes on the chart, taking their tool and kind of drawing, this is where it worked, this is where it didn't really work, it didn't really work here, it worked here, it worked all along here pretty well as support. This was a great bounce area, and just kind of, yeah, trying to find your way with them and the style that you like using in trading and all that stuff. Okay, so now that I've kind of generally given you an overview of what, to me, again, this is just me, success versus not success looks like, and when I adjust settings, I want to go back to the daily time frame, reset these, and just go through all of the specifics about it. We might jump into a quick look at the weekly or monthly at the very end of the band. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this table right here. Table is super, super helpful. Man, I've really loved this, and it's been crushing recently on the daily time frame. You could see that right now the target area is here, so this just flipped over to a new day. It was the target was actually, let me do replay trading, because it's hit the last few targets like spot on perfect for the daily for really the last few weeks. It won't always do that. Every once in a while it'll be wrong for sure. So this was, where it was. So price action a couple days ago, you can see this kind of grayed out area here. This box has been down here for a while saying, hey, price is going to stay below this band, and it did, and it hit this price target really nicely. That said, price is going to bounce somewhere. A couple days ago it said it was going to bounce. It did bounce. Today it kind of got up to, what was it, 112 almost. So a lot of times when I'm looking at the short-term target, I will look somewhere in the middle of it. It's, a lot of times it'll give you a number that'll be at an extreme, but oftentimes you'll see it hit the mid-level. And let's just look at this. I'm going to go down to a 3-hour just to make it move a little slower, and then I'm going to put it back just a few days here just to kind of see how it works. So we got your support proximity. If price is below the midline, it's called support proximity. If it's above the midline, it's called resistance. So that'll change to resistance. That's just kind of a historical price interactions with the band. And the higher it is, so it goes up to 100. 100 means it's touching the band, and then when it's over 100, it's what I think it's actually, it starts over at 0, but it goes into breakout. You'll see that in a minute, but it goes into breakout mode or breakdown mode. And the higher the numbers get, they go up to 100 again. And the closer you get to 100, the more likely you are to a bounce area, because 100 means this is the most extreme move it's seen in its price history. And it doesn't necessarily look at the whole entire history of your chart. It looks at, I think it's the past, was it 1,000 bars or something like that? It looks at a lot of price history, but it doesn't look at the whole chart because it has a window that is actually useful, and after that it's not useful anymore. So anyway, let me hit play on this and let's watch. So the target was there. It had hit that target. Now it says price target is down. You saw this was a few days ago. It moved down. The long-term target is jumping around a little bit, but the long-term target just means that eventually price is going to go out in this area somewhere here. Okay, so hit this price target very nicely. Then the short-term target went up, and you're going to see it's probably going to hit the long-term pattern and the short-term pattern here pretty soon. I'll speed this up a little bit because it's not super important. So yeah, there you go. You saw it hit that price target. Then short-term target switched around to be bearish again, or to some downside. And we'll see what price does. It's still kind of filling this upside long-term target there, and even the short-term target were both right there. Still looking for some downside. Let's see if this gets hit. Downside does get hit there, and the short-term target again pops up here. So we're looking up again for short-term. And while it's here, let me pause this. You can see that this is in breakout. It's just called B4 or breakdown. B4, that means it's 4% of an extreme move, which is not extreme. If you see 100% extreme move, that means literally the most extreme move it's seen. If you see 80, that's pretty extreme. So sometimes I'll use this as finding, it's not often it hits really high numbers like 80 or 90. Those are usually really good. Again, not financial advice, but those are usually really good buys or sells. Depends again on the chart you're looking at and the time frame and all that. But I would really recommend, if you're using this indicator, go into the replay trading and actually use replay trading to see how price works. I would just go back like months and just hit play on replay. You can change the target, the short-term target, to reset each bar close, or to do it in real time. Real time is going to be less accurate. I would say it would be percentage of the time it'd be less accurate, but it might get more moves. If that makes sense. So quarter bar, half bar, all of these settings are how fast or how often the short-term target updates, and the long-term pattern, it just has its own system of updating, and it is what it is. I find it a little bit less useful, but if you do want to try it out, what I do when I'm in bar replay is I just put a little box out. Okay, it was there, and watch if price ever reaches that target where it was. So then you can have an idea of, you know, how accurate it could be in the future. So again, this is all I'm on the daily time frame now. I think that's all I need to go over to. Oh yeah, and then the pattern action. So right now it's below the long-term pattern right here, and it's saying that it's a 98% rejection of when it meets this pattern. It means it's at some point it will come up into this area here. When it does, it's expecting a rejection down from that area. Who knows? I don't know if we get that. And let's see what, I don't even know what day we're on. We'll see. I'll let it play to the end. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, I guess we maybe you kind of saw a rejection right there. I guess I would consider that a rejection. It bounced down, and anyway, but it does hit these targets really nicely a lot of times. Hit this, you know, I'll let it play out to the end. Hit this upside target, then it set a downside bias here, and I guess that's where we are. Oh, it kind of reset. I will say the other thing to note is, let me undo this or just delete this. Another thing to note is oftentimes it's way more accurate in, like when you're doing bar replay, it only gives you so much so many ticks. It doesn't really give you the full picture, unfortunately. So even on the proximity and all that, it's really hard to get a 100% accurate gauge of that tool unless you're kind of watching it live. Because if you're doing bar replay, it'll just give you kind of blocky price movement, and it won't be really the smooth actual price movement that happens. So you could always go to like a really low term time frame to kind of watch it. I don't expect these to be that accurate on a low term time frame, but who knows? You can try it out. Okay, so we talked about this pattern action. We talked about if it, you know, this is now saying currently today, it's saying the long term target is up to, you know, 118K, between 113, 108K to 18K, obviously very big range, but it's saying it's most likely, as of now, going to break through. So it's saying whatever price action does, it eventually will come up here. Maybe it, you know, bounces around a little bit, and then right now it's saying it's going to have a breakthrough. So we'll see in the long run if, you know, if price goes above 118K, then it will have had a breakthrough. But the short-term target is kind of rangy. The long-term target is to the upside, and it says it's a very low % chance of breakthrough right now, though. So to be fair, that's barely. If it's 51%, it'll say breakthrough. If it's 49%, it'll say rejection. And so either you'll actually never see it go to 49%. It'll always be over 50. It'll either be 50% plus breakthrough or 50% plus rejection, basically. All right, that's that table. The second thing I'm going to look at is the very bottom of the chart here, called the touch lines. These work the best on the daily time frame. I really designed this around the daily time frame because I love this indicator for the daily time frame. And you'll see that these targets oftentimes get hit. I've kind of showed these in some videos before, but what happens is when price comes up and wicks into resistance ribbon 2, it creates a touch. So right here, we'll start back here. It wicked into it, created this touch line. It said we're looking for bullish price action. It got fulfilled there and here. But then this also, again, because price was ranging, made another target to the upside, got hit perfectly there. And oftentimes what you'll see is once the target gets hit, it's at least some sideways price action, if not some downside consolidation price action. Okay, so we got both those hit, created another one, and this was consolidating from the last hit. Lots of time consolidating. Then it finally came up and hit price right there. And right before it did that, it made another upside target. And once it hit this target, again, we saw sideways consolidation. And we saw it hit this target. Then what do we see? Downside. And again, also over here, upside target. So for the last however many months this has been, it's been just crushing it, these targets. If this band comes down like this, it will nullify this. And sure, price may end up, you know, going higher, but I will look at that as a failure. So this is not 100% accurate. You can definitely find other times in the past where it failed. This actually called a real nice high here and here, and again, consolidation after it hit. And then once the target ends, it ends. You know, so you see that, you see downside targets. They're less often and less accurate. I found, but right here it was created. It created this line right there. just 1 bar later, maybe 2 or 3 bars later, hit it, and then created another one down here. That took a few more bars out here, hit. But again, each time we see it hit, you kind of see some price go the other way. But once another one's created, it kind of has a little bit of a magnet towards it. Once it hits it, price kind of goes the other way. So let's find, just to show, we'll find sometimes where it failed, because it definitely has failed. Like currently right here, go back to this tool. This was a failure because it created here and got nullified. So this was a failure. This one here was not, because it got hit. And a lot of times, you might expect it to get hit more than once, but a lot of times I think once it's gotten hit once, that is, it's considered valid and kind of done. And after it hit this, it just did a bunch of raging sideways and downside. So all of these got hit really fast. This one did not get hit. So anyway, we can go through plenty more scenarios, but again, this is mostly for the Bitcoin and the 1 day time frame. I find that on the other assets or time frames, I'm gonna just undo a bunch of this stuff. I didn't mess up the chart, just made a bunch of marks all over it. I find that a lot of times other assets and time frames don't work as well. You can mess with the settings. There's just a couple settings for that. One is the touch threshold, which means right now, if price is 0.01% from actually touching the band, it still will create a what do you call it? A touch line. So if you want that to be harder, you can put it down. You can put it like -1. So this makes it very hard. Price has to actually break out over the line even higher to make a threshold, or you can make it really easy. You can put it 1%. Previous bar threshold, that's just looking at, because I don't want it to create a bunch, especially if it's like a breakout and just riding above this band. I don't want to keep creating touch lines, because those aren't very helpful at that point. So this has to do with previous bars and it not letting it create too many touch lines. You can read the description right there, but I want to keep moving. I'm trying to keep this video shorter. Okay, let's get rid of those touch lines and go through all of the settings. Exponent AI, we are looking again. I talked about how you can make it wide or really narrow, depending on the time frame, the asset. Just mess around with that. A lot of times this is the biggest change that will happen to the band. So if I'm trying to create some price interaction, like a bit of let me exit this. If I'm trying to work on a new time frame, new asset, new scenario, I'll start by messing around with the Exponent AI and just see how price interacts with the bands, and see if changing that 1, 2, 3. You can even try decimals like 0.5. I find that whole numbers are generally the best, but who knows? You might find some really interesting stuff on other Exponent AI settings. The band update frequency is just how. Let me just go ahead and actually 0.5. It looks pretty interesting on the daily. You know what? One more thing I wanted to look at on the daily. I'll put it back at 1 because this is just my favorite setting. Back at 1 on the daily time frame. Another thing that's really, really interesting to me is how it oftentimes finds its low somewhere between support ribbon 1 and support ribbon 2. So we found a low. We'll just go all the times. And when I say low, I'm just looking for kind of swings to the midline, maybe swings to resistance 1. We found this, went swing to midline and swing to resistance 1. We saw this right here, which was kind of a double low. It had a little bounce after it went down there, and then another one into the midline. Didn't quite go into the resistance though. Here again, had a nice low, nice bounce. However, came just a little bit lower before it bounced up and is real close to hitting the resistance line now. So, if I was doing like some pyramid entries, I might look at entering, sometime here. So say you entered there, and then you would exit somewhere up here. That would have been a nice trade of 2% and then an extra, 1.5% if I bought twice. But we can find this happens so many times. And sometimes, if you're looking for some buying zones, it'll, kind of wick lower. So I might scale in a little bit as it goes lower here, hoping for a swing kind of up to the midline, even up to that resistance line right there. Again here, up to that midline, up to the resistance. Here, even it was a real small trade, but there was low volatility, so can't expect too much. A lot of times price might, if it's bullish, might respect the midline more. If it's more consolidation sideways, might come down and break. Here we had another one where it double bottomed and then up into that midline, and then had just a really nice run there. This barely broke below it, so I don't know if I would have, if I was trading this at the time, if I might have bought one time right here and had a little nice trade there. Here would be a good example of a failure where you might, if I was trading the strategy, I might buy right there, and then you kind of see price kind of wick lower. So at that point, it's like, okay, do you cut the trade here? Do you scale in maybe a couple more times here and here, and then wait for that bounce? And then, at that point, it would have still been a profitable trade. But there are going to be times, obviously, where price just keeps dropping. So this is not financial advice, because you can absolutely get wrecked if you try to just keep playing this exact strategy with no risk management. But that is just something you just see time and time again, especially with Bitcoin when it's in a more bullish season on the daily time frame. Those are just really, really great buy areas anytime in this band. And then some decent sell areas as well, kind of a little bit higher. I usually look for resistance 1 as a nice sell area. If I'm doing some shorts, shorting is obviously way more, what do you call it, risky. You could have tried to short here and you would have made zero profit if you shorted into that midline. So a lot of times when Bitcoin is bullish, it's going to be much harder to take shorts. Finally up here it did. If I was taking shorts, I would much more rather short off the touch lines, because you saw those touch lines. I mean, it got this high perfectly right there, and got it again there. So those would have been incredible short positions. And I actually did take a short the other day based off of the short-term target, and when price, I think it was back here somewhere, maybe it was off of that high there, I don't remember, but I closed the short quite a while ago and actually bought again long right over here. So okay, yeah, one more thing I wanted to cover here with the 1-day bands, and this may work on other time frames. I have not tried it out too much. Again, really dialed into the 1 day right now. So when we see, a lot of times I'll look at the slope of the resistance ribbon if I'm thinking about long, or vice versa if I'm thinking about going short. But say we have some trending breakout moves. So we have this, we're kind of watching price action. It massively has this massive bearish candle right there. And we are seeing price, we're seeing the bands start to, we were seeing the bands decline, and all of a sudden on that move we saw the bands expand. I would wait until I start seeing the bands start to calm down and decline again before buying. So right there, had a massive, so that means it's expanding. Probably don't want to get caught in the middle of the move. This one, the move is dying out a little bit. This one, it's declining. So volatility is declining again. Now this could be a good bottom area because I see the volatility declining. And what do you know? Nice buy up into that. So let's look at him like this. So this was an extreme move. Then we saw it start to, volatility start to contract again. So maybe going short right here, and that would have absolutely been a great trade. And usually I'm waiting for price to break at least the resistance to or the support to, and for volatility to start going the other way. I might make an indicator, oscillator indicator based on this just to kind of help out with that, but when I get time. I mean, I guess this is not a picture perfect move either, because it's not. I would want to see price come down a little bit lower, but and this is kind of going sideways. So at least volatility is not expanding. So that could have been looked at as a decent buy because volatility is kind of sideways. When it's picture perfect move is when you see kind of more extremes. If you don't see much change in volatility happening, it might mean, you see some sideways, like this example right here. We saw a contraction, and then this move, we started to see expanding volatility. Then we started to see right there, we started to see contracting volatility again. And it was, it got pretty low. So at least this was a general bottom area, but it was more of a range right there. So again, that wouldn't have been super great. You can, if you're wanting to use this indicator more like this, you can probably find, much a lot more examples. And I would just go through on your chart, mark them, see what works, what doesn't. It really needs some kind of strong moves. Yeah, I mean, even here, like, okay, so the resistance band, we got expanding volatility till right here. And where did we start to see the move end? Right there. So, taking some cues off of that is interesting. Might be more helpful in the future if I actually make an indicator, an oscillating indicator based off of that, or some more flags or something like that. So if I get time, I will work on that next. But yeah, that's kind of how I use the daily time frame. Let's look at some of the settings in here, and then we'll wrap this video up. So band update frequency, have not looked at that yet. That's just going to be how often the bands pull in new data and update. And sometimes you can get actually better interaction if you make it slower, because in this case, the bands are going to react slower, and that means when price actually hits them, it'll basically let price hit them a little bit differently and more often, and might find some nice bottom or top areas here. I usually use that in conjunction with Exponent AI and or some of the other settings. So I'm just going to leave that on 1 for now. Let's look at the adaptive learning. This is basically some built-in AI components that kind of look at price interaction with the bands and how successful the bands were interacting with price, and make choices based off of that. So I have not messed a ton with this. I probably will do so more in the future, and I'm sure it will be helpful on different time frames, different assets in different ways. But you have 2 different styles of adaptive learning. One is layer tolerance, which is you're gonna see it's very smooth. The bands get very smooth, and it reacts. It kind of messes with the smoothing, the AI and the smoothing, and then the ML learning, the machine learning, and this is just straight interaction with the bands. And it'll be a little bit more choppy, and the strength is going to, so when it's on ML band learning, adaptive strength is going to affect that, or if you're on layer tolerance, it's going to be your learning rate. So this affects those settings there, and I would just go through and mess with it and see, if it's helpful or not. On some time frames, it's going to, like this one, you can see really small changes happen, but it's not changing a whole lot. Probably would be in conjunction with some other settings be a little bit more helpful. But on the 1 day time frame, those are kind of minimal changes. I might even actually make this a little bit stronger. I don't think you can go to 1. Yeah, you can't go to 1. So maybe we'll go to real severe and just see. Yeah, you see a little bit of movement, but it's not super strong. So as of right now, that's very subtle, and probably again would work differently and better on other time frames. But those settings are there just in case you're interested in messing with them. Probably, if your smoothing was a little bit smaller, might help out a little bit more with those settings being more severe. The other things we're going to look at, I don't think I explained this yet. Maybe I did real briefly, but I'm going to go over it again. Support multiplier. So these are the confluence bands, which I'll maybe rename to ribbons or something like that. So again, this is going to be ribbon 1, support ribbon 1, resistance ribbon 1. This will be support ribbon 2. I'm going to name that 2, and then R3 for ribbon 3. So these are how far each ribbon band is away from the master band right there. Okay, so if it's on 1, I want to put it much further out. I'll say 2 and 3. So this is going to move the support bands much further down. And you can see that's not super helpful on this time frame because they were already pretty dialed in well. I do find these default settings are best for the 1 day, but if you're looking at other time frames and want a wider range, you can absolutely move these ribbons down. I find, not just like 1.1, that's, not going to be much more helpful. I try to go generally up and down by 2 or 3 or 5 even, or 0.5 when I say, 0.2, 0.3, or 0.5. But just mess around with it, see what happens, see if you like those. Adaptive confluence, this works in conjunction with the confluence up here. And these, if you enable that, these end up being maximum values, and these end up being minimum values. So R1 minimum, R2, which is going to be R2 and R3. So if I want my AI to work in a certain range, which is usually much more helpful, I might put this on 0.7, and so that's going to go from 0.7 to 1. So it's going to be that small range right there. Then I might go, the default settings are actually pretty decent, but if I want to make it a small range, I'll do that. So that'll be much smaller. let's see if we see, yeah, it's going to be, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference right there because that's a really small range. And then you can also mess with the adaptation rate to go faster or slower with that. So we'll just put that way faster. And it starts to see some results faster. So let me kind of make this a little bit more severe. Let's go with 0.2 and 1 even. And then on the resistance, let's go, yeah. So you can see that those settings are not super helpful for support because it's not, yeah, it's definitely not helpful. But you can dial these in a little bit more. I think I'm going to reset to default settings because I think the default settings are actually pretty decent, again, for the 1 day time frame. But if you want to mess around with min and max values and using the adaptive confluence, feel free to. Just to kind of go back and forth, I'll show. So this is with it on. You see it tightens up some of the bands, and it does find, to be fair, it does start to find the lows a little bit better. Right here, right there. Breaks through those though, and that's, that might be better without it. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little better without it. So, fine tune it. See how useful it is. And again, adaptation rate right there. We talked about the touch lines already. We talked about, so this is the info table. And those are the predictive zones out here. So this is pretty much the whole indicator. I may work on an expanded version with more settings, but I think those right now will just confuse most users, and these are the most helpful settings that I found. So all that to say, yeah, that's a brief run through of it. And the best teacher is trial itself. Like, I can sit here for hours and talk about these settings, but until you actually get your hands on the controls and start learning, trying it out, seeing what the bands are capable of, you won't really know. So I really would recommend spending at least 4 hours, if not 8 to 12 to 16 hours, just messing with these settings, different time frames, to see what they're capable of, to see, okay, oh, when I change exponent AI to this setting, it does this, and then you'll start to learn the bands themselves and how to create with them and how to actually get them to do what you want to do. Always going to be around the Discord for any questions, and I think that's probably where we'll leave it out right now. I think that is where I will leave it at right now. Gosh, I cannot talk. We can jump to the weekly and monthly and just kind of look at the bands themselves. I will say that, exponent of 1 works pretty well on higher term time frames. Going lower, like the 4 hour, you might try different exponent AI settings. Again, kind of depending on what you're wanting to do. But, on the weekly right now, it's showing kind of it hit this predictive target. It did not hit the recent predictive target though, right there. So that is something. But it did find, it found some resistance. I think you could probably dial these bands in a little bit more because it found some resistance zones here, but I do think the weekly could be dialed in a little bit more. So it really depends on how you want to use them. But this kind of like I was talking about the daily time frame, the in between support 1 and support 2 ribbon is usually a nice bounce zone. So that holds true. Even on the weekly time frame, kind of the same there, but kind of the same there, I guess. This time though, it went higher, didn't really go lower. We'll see. Well, actually, it'll be interesting to see where this week ends, because if we come back down and maybe test support, which is at 105, or eventually kind of come down and maybe this band comes up and we retest around 98 to 100K. I actually think that retest right there would be a great bouncing point. Or even if price comes down somewhere, in like the 102 area, that would be a real nice, just talking about these zones right there, real nice bounce. Again, this is on the weekly time frame. And we do see on the weekly time frame, a lot of times price, the absolute lows of the bear market will come off of some of these levels here. So that's super interesting on the weekly. The monthly, I also find real interesting, though we don't have a whole lot of history. You do find that, again, gosh, I hate this chart setting right here. You do find that some of these lows bounce, that kind of come down to the same area. Now, this was way long ago, so I don't really, here we go. This was way long ago, so I don't really count that as much as this one, did find its lows actually right off of this support 2 band, which was interesting. And then it had that, dip right there again. And that's when you saw the real low. So that was kind of interesting to me. Saw some of these, price kind of come up wick there, the low here, then it really took off. So yeah, super interesting stuff, man. I'm stoked about this indicator. Again, kind of talking about finding tops. It obviously, this was a massive run to upside, so you wouldn't have wanted to short anywhere there. But once we kind of saw price come back in and reject from that band, that would have been a nice top. So this is resistance 2, reject from that band, sideways consolidation, reject from the. I guess that was a rejection, went a little bit higher than down. So yeah, there are a lot of little things you can glean from this. I do think the monthly and weekly can be dialed in a lot more too. So again, these are at default settings, but I'm going to leave it off there. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you don't have this indicator, it is on the Patreon, and I'm having a sale going on right now. So the what's it called? The discount code will be in the description below, as well as the link to the Patreon. And I will post that in the Discord as well, so you guys have access to all that. So keep on keeping on out there. Stay safe, and I will see you guys in the next video.